So welcome to another episode of Discussions by Domain. Today I have Ryan Cooper, principal of Cooper LLC law firm in Cranford, New Jersey. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Than's for having me, Anthony.
No problem. Ryan, before we get into the topic today, can you just quickly introduce yourself, give us a little background about you yourself, and then how the firm got started?
Sure. So Cooper LLC, we are a full-service commercial law firm. My practice focuses on privacy and cybersecurity, information security, and issues arising out of technology. But we have 3 lawyers. We have offices in Cranford, New York, and Pennsylvania.
Awesome.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And we have a full complement of commercial litigation and commercial transaction services.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. And give us a little rundown on how you got started in law and your slight history in that area.
Sure. It's been a roundabout course, as it often is. So I graduated law school. I worked for a federal judge first, went to a large law firm in Manhattan, then transitioned my practice to New Jersey, where I had a lot of ties. I grew up here and had a lot of connections and relationships that I wanted to build upon. As a junior to mid commercial litigation attorney at the time, I was increasingly interested in the ways that technology was not only changing my practice, but was going to create a whole new realm of legal risk for my clients. And it was a terrific melding of my innate interest already into technology and tinkering. I don't have a science degree, was someone who always took things apart when I was a little kid.
Okay.
It's amazing I never electrocuted myself. Well, I did, but permanently. But I always loved to take things apart. I always loved to understand how things worked, and I was always interested in technology and finding ways to use technology to make my life more efficient. And so I had that innate interest, and as I saw the proliferation of devices, the proliferation of electronic data, the ease at which we can move huge volumes of electronic data without the friction, the cost of literally boxing it up and moving it with a truck anymore. You can move now truckloads of paper across the globe within a few seconds.
Yeah.
I began to see, I didn't see all of this then, I would have been rather clairvoyant of me, but I began to be very interested in how this was going to affect my clients.
Okay.
So it must have been 10 years now, which seems hard to believe. It seems a lot more recent than that. I started exploring what these risks might look like, what the legal landscape might look like, and pursued it from there. And 3 years ago, I started Cooper LLC with just myself. We're 3 lawyers now, as I mentioned, and we're hoping to add a few more before the year's over.
Very good. Well, congrats on the success
Thank you.
so far, and I'm looking forward to getting into the topic of today.
Great, me too.
We're going to get into the topic today, which is there is no magic checklist for information security. Just wanted to get your quick insights on what made you come up with that topic.
Sure.
And you're going to shortly come out with a blog post on this yourself that will be published. But what made you think of this topic?
Sure. So I think as we both have experienced, clients are always in a hard spot to understand what is the gold standard of information security.
Yeah.
And I think the shocking answer is that there is a gold standard we want to achieve, but there is no checklist that you can just mark off the boxes and say, congratulations.
I'm good to go.
Here's the gold standard, you got it.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 questions that you and I have talked about in the past that clients have to confront. One is whether or not they're protecting information for third-party risk, which is when clients have other people's information that they need to keep secure. Now that may be clients who have consumer data, or maybe clients who are vendors to other businesses, and so that's one level of security. And then there's another basket, which is first-party security, and that is clients I have who have very valuable and proprietary information. It may be sales data, it may be intellectual property such as trademarks or patents, et cetera. And so that's often the first question that we need to confront. And then beyond that, if you look at a lot of the standards organizations, there is conflicting information.
Yeah.
And the example that you and I were talking about that led to our conversation today, and that I'll be blogging about, is I think in April, Microsoft, a huge industry player that has baseline security configurations for its software, abandoned its recommendation that users implement an automatic password expiration policy,
Okay.
which I'm sure many of us are familiar with. That's when your system tells you it's been 90 days, 60 days, whatever it may have been, and you now have to change your password. And that was a policy recommendation that NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, had abandoned a few years ago. And those of us practitioners like yourself and I in the business had long realized that those policies often were penny wise and pound foolish. They were well-intentioned, but often led to workarounds by the user that would undermine security more than the policy augmented it. And so how do clients navigate that? Which standard do they adhere to is a challenge. And so, my mantra, as I know yours is really customizing an information security program to the client's specific needs.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah.
Walk us through your defense and maybe proactive litigation of these third parties, and what does that look like?
Sure, and you're right. I mean, as you and I have been talking about, you see third parties being the target more and more, and that's because they're aggregators. They're a gateway. Either they've aggregated data from a bunch of different clients, and therefore a hacker can get a bigger pot in a single hit, or they have the gateways to multiple clients. So I think so. First, proactively, I think there are three things I always hammer clients about when we want to prepare ourselves and position ourselves to be strongest against third-party risk. And the first issue is smart contract policies. They will include certifications from the vendor as to their security requirements or their security standards that they meet our clients' requirements. They need to have insurance provisions and not just. Yes, you have certain numbers of certain amounts of insurance coverage, not just insurance certificates. You and I were, I think, exchanging some comments on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about a vendor that went bankrupt, which will leave the damaged clients on the hook for it. You need to make sure that you're added as an additional insured on those policies, so you have direct access. So contract provision terms, you need to then follow up and actually implement those contract provisions. So particularly when you have a contract that allows you to due diligence your vendors, you really got to do that. And you can and you should, and that's why you put it in there in the contract in the first place. And that's twofold. One, you need to due diligence to make sure your vendor's doing what they said they are going to do. And also, to jump ahead for a second to the litigation side, if that vendor does get hacked or there's an intrusion and your business's data or your client's data is accessed, you may be held to account. You had a due diligence right, and you never due diligenced your vendor security. And had you due diligence your vendor security, maybe you would have learned something that would have caused you to do something differently. So that's a critical provision. And then insurance for yourself. I'm a big proponent that any comprehensive information security plan has to have its own crafted cyber insurance policy for the areas you can't secure. An analogy I like to use is to day-to-day lives. We take steps to secure our assets in different ways, right? We don't have all our assets in our homes, right? We keep money in a bank because there's institutional security there. We might keep jewelry or other very expensive items in a safe or a safe deposit box because of that. But at the end of the day, we also have insurance because you can't protect everything absolutely all the time, and so you need to have an insurance policy that is designed so that if the worst should happen, that you do have coverage that will help either make you whole or cover you for your liability. So that's really a proactive step, and it's contracts, it's due diligence, and it's insurance. And then litigating, or not, hopefully pre-litigation, in the event you do have a third party who suffers a hack, a vendor, that is tough to map out. But first and foremost is an assessment of what has occurred. That also really goes back to the contract terms. If you have a vendor and you have a provision that the vendor needs to let you know in the event there's been a data breach. Those contract terms can take a million different forms.
Okay.
And in fact, a lot of times, if it just says, well, if you are breached, you need to let me know. Well, a vendor, as we all know in the business, a vendor may suspect they've been breached, but not sure they've been breached for a substantial period of time. And they may read the contract and say, well, I don't know that I've been breached, I just think I've been breached, and I'm not going to tell all my clients that I've been breached until I'm certain. And that is a tremendous amount of time that could be detrimental.
100%.
There's another contract provision you may want to, we want to craft terms so that my clients are alerted as soon as there's a suspicion of a breach, because then we can take preemptive steps to minimize liability.
Yeah, I think the average right now, I could be wrong, but I think is now 9 months where they're living on different systems, and 9 months goes by.
Right.
I mean, they've taken or seen everything that they need to see.
Absolutely.
And like you said, the quicker everybody knows, the quicker everybody can quickly respond.
Right.
You know.
Absolutely, and protect their own rights. And so responding to that, you want to assess the situation as soon as possible. Cut off access to your own network if that's the nature of the vendor's relationship. You certainly don't want to be in a position where a vendor's getting maybe daily or weekly dumps of your data as part of the service agreement, and something you wouldn't continue to do if you thought there was a risk that there's been a intrusion on the vendor side.
Yeah. Wow. So real good stuff. Thank you for sharing all of this. Ryan is also going to be putting out his own blog post on this topic that'll be covered. We'll be writing something up as well and link to it. But let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to know who Ryan is.
Sure.
I'm going to start with the book or books maybe you've gifted the most to other individuals, or that have changed your thought process the most over your career, life, whatever it is.
That is a great question. I'm a huge fan of books, and I don't get to read as much as I like to, as I used to.
My stack keeps going higher and higher, and the kids don't allow me to get to any of them.
Exactly. I was saying, it sounds like our nightstands look exactly the same. That's a terrific question. And a lot of books have been hugely influential on me over the years. What I keep coming back to, and those who know me best have probably heard me talk about this, is a series of books that Robert Caro, who's a biographer, has written. He wrote The Power Broker, which is about Robert Moses, an individual in the first half of the 20th century that really shaped modern New York. And that book is just an amazing biography. I love biographies because they're such a great combination of history as well as psychological profile. And The Power Broker was amazing because it not directly related to my day-to-day work, but it's just an amazing profile of how government power has an amazing ability to both improve the lives of residents and citizens, as well as destroy them, to be totally honest with you. And the story of Robert Moses is a story of a man who used government power to do both. And so it's fascinating. And he also went on to write Robert Caro, that is, went on to write a series of biographies on Lyndon Johnson. Another one of my favorites, because if you ever want to read what's probably the most thrilling true life legal thriller. There's no murder involved, but it's more thrilling than I think you could ever write in fiction, and that's the second biography he wrote of Lyndon Johnson. He tells the story of how Lyndon Johnson literally stole the 1948 Texas Senate election, and how the court was literally on the cusp of opening the ballot box that would have proved that the election had been fraudulent, and he won that election by literally 87 votes. And it was enjoined by the Supreme Court, and I believe, I haven't read the book in a number of years, but I believe there's an individual literally running down the hall to yell stop to the judge to stop the proceedings, and a few minutes longer the whole game would have been given up. And I'm sure I didn't do it justice, but it's called The Means of Ascent, and it's just a fascinating book, and I talk about it frequently because it is truer than fiction, and if it was fiction, you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, exactly. No, those are good recommendations. Definitely haven't come up before, so good stuff.
Good.
Let's go to either a thought leader or I like the other term of like everyday practitioner who is really making a name for themselves. Maybe you've worked with them and they really have delivered on what you've asked them to deliver on, or you were surprised by the results they actually got, or just their ethic that the audience should know about here in the Northeast region.
Sure. Well, I think I'll address both. I mean, in terms of someone who has been a tremendous resource and an individual you and I both know is Rob Klieger at Digital Forensics. He's a forensics expert, has been a friend for a number of years, and whenever we've worked together, Rob has delivered in ways that always surpass expectations, has been a terrific resource of information for me. And a great partner in a number of matters that we've been able to work together on. And thought leaders, I can't go without mentioning Bob Chesler at Anderson Kill. It's another large law firm. Bob is certainly not new on the scene. He's really a thought leader. He helped, I think, in my opinion, invent the insurance coverage practice in the 1980s.
No way.
He and I had the pleasure of working with Bob when I was a young attorney. He was really like a mentor to me, and we've continued to be great friends, and I think is also a terrific resource. And in terms of insurance coverage for policyholders, there's no one could go wrong with talking to Bob, and he's someone whose expertise and friendship I rely on frequently.
I've had the pleasure of meeting him, I think, twice now, and just the knowledge and his authenticity just comes out in his passion for what he does, and it's great. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Let's go to a nonprofit organization or a charity that you're involved with or you support that you'd like to get some recognition to as well.
So that's a terrific question. I've had the pleasure of being a part of or working with a number of nonprofits over the course of my career so far. I highly recommend the American Civil Liberties Union of New Jersey, the ACLU of New Jersey. It was an organization I got to be a member of the trustees for a number of years back. And it's an organization that those who think they know it might be surprised, but it's really an organization out there that's fighting for individual rights of everyone. On a daily basis, and I think they're a really important counterweight to in our society right now. So I highly recommend them.
Good stuff. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that we link to them. Ty will link to them in the show notes to go directly to their site so people can check them out.
Oh, great.
We'll finish with what advice would you give to, I don't want to say like 21-year-old self. I want to say like 24, 25-year-old self. You're that young new attorney on the block, and what advice, looking back now, you started your own firm, you've been in business for 10 years, all of this stuff. What advice would you go back and give that individual? At 24, I was still finding myself in many ways. A lot of who I am was there already, but a lot was not, and I think that was a lot. There was a lot of my personality that I was still looking for, as I think probably most of us were. I was still in law school at that age, I think hard work. I'm a huge proponent of hard work, and the goals, when you're 24, the goals seem very far away. A couple years seems like a lifetime. And I think that was something, I had a long-term perspective. I was fortunate to have that at that age. And I think my advice would be to continue to stick with that. It would be to reinforce that someone is on the right track with a long-term perspective. Patience. Patience, yeah. Patience and perseverance. Grit. I'm not familiar. Grit is a topic that's talked about frequently nowadays, and I steadfastly believe that is a huge factor in success. Is getting up every day and showing up. Showing up. I couldn't agree more. One of the things that I've learned over, I would say, I'm still learning every single day, but especially the last year, is the patience part of it. Like a year isn't that much time in the grand scheme of things, and just be more patient. Good stuff. One thing I'll add, I think consistent with patience is perspective. Maybe not so much at 24, but certainly over the course of my career, I have learned that keeping things in perspective is so important, and I think is not always done. It's not, and I think I distinguish it from, it's not
that you don't take things seriously. I think you can take things seriously while keeping things in perspective. And I think keeping a perspective about things helps keep an even keel, and helps keep thought objective, and helps prevent decisions from being rash, which as we know, have collateral consequences and snowballing effects. So and I think that goes hand in hand with patience.
100%.
Yeah.
So good stuff. So everybody, Ryan Cooper from
thank you.
Cooper LLC in Cranford, New Jersey. We'll make sure we link to not only his website, so you can get in touch with him if you need proactive support for information security policies, vendor risk management. These are all topics that we preach every single day, and hearing it from a third party just validates that you should be doing this in an individual that's fighting these battles every day in the courtrooms and in litigating them. So we'll link to him and his organization directly to their website. We'll also link to your LinkedIn profile. You are fairly active on LinkedIn.
I try to,
which I like. I think it's a great platform.
Yeah.
And so we'll link to that as well. Ryan, thank you for being on.
Anthony, I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.